One of the easiest ways to manage the project is to create a project plan in Microsoft Excel. Let's take a look how you can do it from scratch. I'll show you step-by-step instructions how to do it in Microsoft Excel. This is useful for any type of project. Let's go ahead and get started. To create a project plan file, you need to navigate to the Files section in Microsoft Teams and select New, Excel Workbook. I'm going to give it a name Marketing Project Plan and click the Create button. From the standpoint of Microsoft Teams, we just created Microsoft Excel document, so all the features of Excel are present and available to us. I'm going to zoom in by using the plus sign in the bottom right corner. In the first step, we will define columns for the project plan. Column A will be ID column. This will be a unique ID for each task in the project plan. Column B will define a phase, and we will have 7 phases in the project: initiation, POC for proof of concept, design, build, test, launch, and support. Column C will contain tasks for the project. Column D will define a status, and in the statuses, we will have not started, in progress, delayed, or completed. Column E will define who this task is assigned to on our project team. Column F will contain the start date for the task, and column G will contain the end date. Column H will contain hourly rate for the resource, and column I will contain units of measure, for example, hours. So this way we can calculate the cost by multiplying rate by the hours. Column J will contain estimated cost, and column K will contain actual cost for the task. To make the document look more professional, we will highlight the row, make it bold, and we will assign a different background color. We will also expand column C for the task to allow us for the longer text. And in addition, we will select the values and assign borders for the selected region. We will also rename the name of the sheet in Microsoft Excel document. To do that, I'll double-click on the sheet name and assign a new name, Project Plan, to the document. Now let's go ahead and enter our first task. First task's ID will be 1, and the task itself will be to define marketing campaign goals. I'm going to expand the column width a little bit, so the task fits into the column. For the phase, this task belongs in initiation phase, but instead of typing initiation, I'm going to create a drop-down which will define all the phases for the project. Because we might create more than one drop-down, I am going to create a new tab just for the drop-downs. To do that, I'm going to click the plus sign, zoom in a little bit, and then I'm going to type all the phases related to the project. Phases is just the column header. I'm going to make it bold so we can differentiate it. And there are 7 different phases that's typically in the project: initiation, POC, which stands for proof of concept, design phase, build phase, test phase, launch phase, as well as support. To create a drop-down in the main project plan, I am going to select the area which will have the drop-downs, navigate to the Data tab, click on the Data Validation, and then select Allow Values from List. For the source of the list, I am going to navigate to our other tab and select the 7 values in which we defined the project phases: initiation, POC, design, and etc., and click OK. Now I am able to select the value from the drop-down, and since our first task belongs to initiation phase, I'm going to select initiation and expand the column a little bit so it fits well into the column B. For the statuses in the project, I am also going to define the drop-down, and now might be a good time to make sure that it focuses only on the drop-downs. I'm going to click on the sheet and type the name. I'm going to give it a name, Drop-Down Values, which will clearly identify the purpose of this sheet. We will have 4 different phases in our project plan. I'm going to define a column Phases and then enter all the 4 phases into the project. I'm going to highlight the header of column B into bold, but instead of navigating back to the Home tab and selecting bold, I'm going to use Format Painter. To do that, I'm going to select the phases, navigate back to the Home tab, and select Format Painter. Format Painter ultimately copies the formatting from the cell A1 value, and I'm going to paste the formatting into the phases, into the cell B1. As you can see, it copied the formatting. And now I realized that the title of the cell B1 is incorrect. Instead of phases, it should represent statuses. I'm going to quickly change phases in cell B1 into statuses. And now we can go back to the project plan and define the statuses by selecting the range of D2 through D17, going to the Data tab, selecting Data Validation, selecting Allow List, and for the source, navigating to the Drop-Down Values tab and selecting 4 drop-down values that we've defined for this project. I'm going to click OK, and now I can select the status for the task 1, which is not started. I'm going to expand the width of column D by double-clicking on the line that separates column D and column E. Now you can see that the value not started completely fits into the cell D2. But what I've noticed is that because of the expanding column widths, now not the entire project plan fits on the screen. I'm going to change the zooming a little bit, just to make sure everything fits. In column E, we're going to define the team members working in the project. And you might have guessed it. Instead of typing the names of team members, we'll create another drop-down. To do that, I'm going to navigate to Drop-Down Values tab and use column C to define team members. On my team, I'm going to have Fatima Patel, Nicole Jackson, Jason Smith, Ramesh Kumar, Xia Zhang, Anya Saharova, Sumita Reddy, and Mildred Ramos. In addition, I'm going to define a non-existent team member. I will call her TBD, which stands for To Be Determined. I will use TBD value when I don't know whom to assign. And now let's follow the steps and define the drop-down for team members. I'm going to navigate back to the Project Plan tab, select column E values from E2 to E17, navigate to the Data tab, select Data Validation, choose Allow Values from List, and in the source value, when I put cursor there, navigate back to the drop-down values and select all of my team members. After clicking OK, I can select the Assign To value. And for this particular task, I'm going to select Sumita Reddy. Now is the time to expand column E a little bit so the full value fits, as well as navigate back to the drop-down values tab and highlight in bold the team member's header. To do it, I'm going to navigate back to the Home tab and select bold. To better define start and end date, we would benefit from having a calendar. There are multiple ways you can get a calendar. What I typically like to do, I like to create a separate tab and call it a calendar. In this tab, we can add the actual calendar, and most of the desktops provide you with the view of the calendar. I am going to navigate to my calendar and use Windows shortcut Windows-Shift-S to select the calendar for August and paste it into this tab, and do exactly the same thing for September's calendar. This way, I can always reference the calendar months and specific dates right inside my project plan. Having a calendar handy will help me define the start date for my task as August 2nd, 2021, and this task should be finished by end of the week in August, which would be August 6th. Sumita is a very expensive resource, but she does a quality work, and despite the fact that she charges me $100 per hour, I am willing to pay this rate because she does an amazing work. I am going to select the rate of 100 and put it into the column H, which I am going to format as dollar values. And I am going to select United States currency. I am estimating that it will take Sumita 7 hours to define marketing campaign goals, so my estimated cost can be calculated as multiplication of the rate, which would be value in the cell H2, multiplied by the units, which would be 7 hours, and the total estimated cost will be $700. The actual cost we will enter later, because it might take less or it might take more for Sumita to complete this work. Once we defined our first task, now is the time to define other tasks for initiation phase. In addition to defining marketing campaign goals, you potentially may need to do market research as well as competition research. You may also consider doing 2 additional tasks before starting the mainstream project, defining return on investment for the campaign, as well as identifying the vendor to create campaign creatives. Once we've identified the tasks, now is the time to assign them to initiation phase. We can do it by using the drop-down for each particular cell, starting in B3. Or we can just expand the drop-down to the area of the tasks that we've just created. Similar things for task IDs. Our first task has an ID of 1. We can manually type in IDs, or we can create an easy formula. For example, our formula might say equals cell A2 plus 1. And then we can just expand this formula until the end of the column. Let's look at the tasks you might consider doing as part of the proof of concept for marketing project. For example, you might consider piloting marketing video and blog post. You might also consider marketing published materials, as well as piloting creative materials. And once we've identified these tasks, we might consider adding them into the proof of concept phase. Now might be a good time to assign statuses for the tasks we've just created. Before you started working on the project, you might have completed a little bit of the market research, as well as researched the competition. So the correct status for these 2 tasks might be in progress. You also might have started discussions with the marketing department about the best ways to market videos and blog posts. So the correct status for that task also might be in progress. The rest of the tasks in this group probably would be in the non-started status. You also might consider assigning resources for these tasks. Typically, resource assignment indicates who owns the task and ultimately who is responsible for completing the task. Sometimes you may not have resources identified. For example, for the task 8, to pilot creative materials, I do not know who the person might be doing this particular work, so I assign TBD with the intent of later replacing to be determined with the actual resource assigned to own this particular task. When assigning dates, you might consider consulting with the calendar to make sure that the dates do not fall on the non-business days. You also might consider replicating the dates because some of the tasks assigned to different resources can be done in parallel. Some tasks, like identifying vendors for creative campaigns, might have a lot of unknowns and a lot of variables involved. You might consider giving yourself a longer period of time to run through this task. This helps create a buffer and allows you to complete this task on time. Typically, next phase of the project, like POC in our case, doesn't start until the previous initiation phase of the project is completed. Because last task of initiation phase is not scheduled to complete until August 31st of 2021, it might make sense to postpone starting tasks in proof of concept phase until at least the beginning of the September. Because different people running different tasks in the POC phase, we might consider running the tasks in parallel and giving them the same timeline. Different resources typically have different hourly rates associated with them. But some companies, when run projects, use the same rate, especially for full-time equivalent, basically for employees of the company, to simplify the process. And this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to replicate the rate for Sumita Reddy to all other resources. The mastery of the experienced project manager typically comes in with the experience to estimate the tasks. Here in the column I, we might want to put the estimate of how much time this particular task will actually take to complete. There are different rules and different ideas how this could be estimated. For contractors, typically you would want to put actual hours, basically the effort for the work. But for employees, a lot of times project managers just put the hours in between the dates. So for example, in between 8/9 and 8/12, which represent 4 work hours in August, the effort might be 32 hours. And this is something you might consider adding here for this particular task, assuming you have a dedicated resource, Nicole Jackson, working on that particular project and doing this particular task. And obviously, because the estimated cost is just the formula, we're going to replicate the values of the formula across all the cells in the column J. This way, Microsoft Excel automatically calculates the values for estimated cost. I just applied the same rule as I did for the task of market research to the tasks for competition research, define return on investment, as well as identifying the vendor. Basically took all the hours in the workday and put them into the units for the task so the estimated cost for the task can be completed. As I was doing reconciling, I also noticed that I mistakenly put POC task into August, which is incorrect. The intent is to start POC phase in September, once we're done with the initiation phase. I am going to quickly go ahead and change this from August to September. As you can see, this is extremely easy to do in Microsoft Excel. And as a last step, I am going to enter the hours for the POC phase. And once hours entered for the first task in POC phase, because dates are the same, I'm just going to replicate the hours across all remaining tasks. Typically, during the design phase of marketing campaign, you need to design artwork, define marketing messaging, create campaign video or multiple videos, as well as update company's website to reflect the content from the campaign. I'm going to extend the design phase indicator to all the tasks we've just added for the design phase. Because based on our plan, we are planning to hire external company to create this marketing materials and be responsible for all of these updates, I am going to add into the assigned to column TBD and then expand the value to all the tasks in the design phase. I will do the same thing for the status because this task has not been started yet. For the build phase of marketing campaign, we would like to focus on actually creating the artwork and all of the required marketing materials. During the build phase, we would like to create marketing campaign content, validate effectiveness of the campaign with senior leadership, since campaign represents the face of the company and is very important to marketing positioning of the organization. And based on these two validations, we would like to adjust the content and make changes to increase the success rate of marketing campaign. Once tasks have been defined, I am going to expand the build phase to all the tasks in this phase. It looks like we ran out of rows in my document, and I will do the copy by selecting the row 17, right mouse clicking on the row, selecting copy, and then selecting rows 18 through 22 and doing the paste. I'm going to clear off the content here by selecting the content and clicking the delete button. And now I'm ready to enter the remaining tasks for my project plan. Next phase of the project is the test phase. I'm going to select the test in the row 18. I also noticed that the header for my columns is not showing up anymore, so I'm going to fix the header. I will do it by selecting the row 1 and then navigating into View section, and then selecting Freeze Panes, and then selecting Freeze Top Row. So now when I scroll, I still see the content of the header in my top row. I'm also going to expand the content of the column C so I can see all the values in the column C. I'm going to do it by selecting the separator and expanding it a little bit to the right. Now you can see that the value in the cell C17 shows up completely and doesn't have any impact on the column D. Typically in the test phase of the campaign, once everything has been decided, you just do an editorial review of the content. You look at the spelling and the message itself and determine how well it resonates with your target audience. Now might be a good time to expand column C again to make sure everything fits, as well as put the status as non-started and find the right resources for the tasks. Since this is more of the internal tasks in the build phase, we need to assign the quality resources from the organization instead of relying on contractors and marketing company. To do that, I'm going to select my best resource on the team, Sumita Reddy, and then expand the value across rows 14 through 18. Sumita is also an excellent resource for editorial reviews of the content. She catches all the errors very quickly, so I assigned her this task as well as other tasks in the build phase. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this video was helpful and helped you to solve your challenge. If you liked the content, please give this video a big thumbs up. This tells us that you need more content like this, and we will make sure to deliver it to you in the future. Also, please make sure to check out our free and premium resources on the website. All you need to do is to go to the menu section and select appropriate options. In addition, make sure you don't forget to look at the downloads in the description section of this video. I also recommend that you follow online training for everyone. We are constantly delivering new content to help you solve different problems and challenges. And I also have a favor to ask. If you know someone who would benefit from this content, please make sure to share this video with your friends or colleagues to help them solve their challenges. Make sure to leave your questions or suggestions in the comment section of this video. And all the best on your journey. Thanks for watching.